Georges County, where I sat on the school board for 10 years, supporting education, authorizing charter schools, and pushing for educational equity for all. I also want to say that my wife is a school principal. We do this every day at home. We are fighting as a family for education. Her high school sits on a community college campus where the students are dual enrolled. My children are in dual enrolled. And see, we are at the precipice of where education is going to students graduate both college and career ready. I'm so excited to throw it to my sister, Carrie, and tell about yourself as we launch on this new journey together.
Hey, everybody, it's Carrie Rodriguez. I'm Matthew, Miles, and David's mom and Max and Dylan's bonus mom, and I'm the president of the National Parents Union. Curtis, we're talking education. I thought we were going to chop it up about basketball. We are both basketball parents here.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we got to throw a little bit of that into the mix too. I mean, we want to talk about education and politics, but man, we're also bringing that really competitive nature and spirit that our kids are showcasing all the time. But I got to tell you, it is a critical time. I know in my house, I've got 6th through 11th graders here, like running me ragged on a regular basis, whether it's school, whether it's out of school, but we are laser focused on preparing them for their future. And there's a lot to digest, especially in the last 6 months. There has been a lot of changes, a lot of evolution. And I spend my time all day, every day, talking to parents across this country. At the National Parents Union, we have 1,800 affiliated organizations in all 50 states, Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico. We represent about 1.8 million families through that network that we've built. And it's my great honor that every week I get to spend time with some of our top leaders in our Family Advisory Council, getting information from the grassroots level in terms of what they're experiencing, what they're seeing. And frankly, that is the power behind our organization, our agenda, our research, our polling. And frankly, we're trying to do everything we possibly can to make sure that their priorities are heard in politics and policy. So excited to be with you on this inaugural day of our podcast. So let's get into it.
Let's get into it. And I don't talk basketball as much as I used. I am so burnt out, I guess, in some ways, but it's for the kids. Love my son, Curtis, my daughter, Ivy, who are doing great work. But again, basketball parents, we salute you. Look at this AAU. That's a whole other conversation. We may talk about that one in the past, but not today. But today's our first episode of the union. And what is the union? I mean, you always, asking what is this? It's what me and Carrie thought we always needed. There's so much going on in education every day. It's like drinking from a fire hose. And if you're like us, we're worried about being good spouses, good parents, just trying to take care of ourselves and trying to keep up with all this stuff. It just becomes overwhelming. And so we said, let's just put together a weekly podcast live. We want to make sure that we are in tune with what's happening. And we want to stay up to date to make sure we didn't record it yesterday because something might have happened since yesterday. But we want to touch on news. What's happening in education, both at the federal level, at the state level, and in some cases at the local level. What's happening in politics? Who's running for office? Who's running for state school board? Who's running for local school? Who's running for Congress? Who's running for Senate? Who's running for president? And what does it mean for education? What's happening in research? The work that I do is what's happening around the country and people saying what's working best for education. What are the outcomes? What are the best practices? What's happening in the polling space? People are going out on a regular basis, and I know Carrie's going to highlight what they do at NPU around how we are listening to parents and educators, people on the grassroots level to say, what do you want for yourselves? And then eventually we're going to bring on guests. We're going to have people on who are going to talk directly to you about what they're hearing and seeing about education in their community and how it's impacting particularly minority serving communities and minority kids like mine and Carrie's. And so we're looking forward to on a weekly basis right here at 12 o'clock for you to join us every week. We'll be we'll be on our LinkedIn pages, our X pages, our Facebook pages. You'll be able to find us. We're going to record it. We're going to repost it. You can share it, but you can get your download every week so that you can find out what's happening in education. Carrie, you decided to join on this with me. Why did you do so? Why do you think this pod is so important right now?
I think it's for a couple of reasons. Number one, again, we work with parents and families across this country and leaders of organizations on the grassroots level. And what we were seeing is that when big things are happening in politics, big news erupting out of the Trump administration, executive orders, all this stuff coming down. It can seem so big and so scary and so hard to understand if you're not an expert that it's almost like anxiety paralysis, and people stop actually engaging in their work on the local level because they're like, oh my God, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to do this anymore. Like, it's so much of what we have seen over the last couple of weeks or last couple of months has really left people, in a state of shock, wondering whether or not they can continue their work. So it's really important that folks like you and me, Curtis, hop on and really break it down for folks and say, like, listen, here's what they're trying to do. Here's what you've got to be nervous about. Here are things that are changing. Here are things that can't be changed. Here are things that we have to fight for. Here are things that we could get excited about because they're new and different. Because honestly, we got to make progress for kids under any and all conditions. So it doesn't matter who's the president. And I'll be the first to tell you, I was critiquing the Biden administration and Secretary Cardona, and I'm actually hopeful we might get Miguel Cardona on this podcast to talk with him a little bit about his perceptions. But you know what? We might get Linda McMahon as well, because on both sides of the issues, it's our job as parent advocates, as teachers, as folks that are invested in education to make sure that we are holding everybody's feet to the fire. Because I don't know about you, Curtis, I'm tired of tinkering at the edges.
Yeah.
We got to move for our kids. This is life and death. I mean, for kids like yours and mine, if we don't actually get on this and make some real change, the consequences are poverty, incarceration, and even death in some cases. So we need to make sure that this is an urgent issue. It doesn't matter if you're on the right or the left. We're going to be equally tough on you. And frankly, we're going to be looking for new ideas, because if you want to blow something up, I want to hear what your solution is. I want to hear, if you don't like the way things have been going, what are we doing next? And how are we making sure that the next thing that we do is equitable and everybody has the opportunity to embrace it?
Thank you. And we want you as viewers to hold us accountable. Clearly, Carrie is in tune with parents from around the country, and she'll talk a little about her organization today and in future episodes, where they are speaking directly to parents on the grassroots level in the cities and states that they're working in. You all knew me with my Real Men Teach community. These guys are going to hold me accountable. After this show, Carrie, I'm going to get DMs and text messages and Curtis, how come we didn't talk about this? Carrie, you're going to get messages from parents. And so we wanted to make sure that we were highlighting the voices of groups that oftentimes don't get highlighted in this sort of political news era where teachers and parents are often secondary. We're going to center the voices of teachers and parents in a way that you haven't seen before. And we're going to highlight things that you haven't, really had time to worry about because you're so busy being a parent, being a teacher, trying to run your classroom, run your school. And there have been Supreme Court cases and things happening at the federal level that we're going to highlight. And I'm going to highlight one right now. More recently, people like myself and Carrie have been fighting up against, these strategies to really cut back on public education and what education means as far as funding. And so recently, there was a Supreme Court case here in Washington, D.C. that was heard by the Supreme Court. It was a case that goes back to 2023, where the state of Oklahoma, the state charter school board, approved a virtual charter school that was brought forth by a religious institution. The Supreme Court heard that case, and there were two things that the Supreme Court was looking at. One, whether this particular school would go against what the First Amendment said and what we call the Establishment Clause, which prohibits states from endorsing religion. On the other side, there were folks looking at whether this particular decision on pushing back up against this charter school would bar religious discrimination. And so the Supreme Court held their case. There were folks who were advocating on both sides of the aisle, trying to push for definitions of what it means to be a public school, whether public money can be used to fund religious schools, but also what it would mean if this was allowed. If religious charter schools were allowed, what would it mean for making schools, denominational or religious? And what would it mean to go against the non-denominational view of schools, which could affect how we unify and how we divide ourselves on religious basis? And so the outcome was a 4-4 tie. One of the Supreme Court justices recused herself. And so you all know there are 9, but, in most cases, there's a majority decision. In this case, it was 4-4. when this happens at the Supreme Court level, when there's a tie, there's no sort of there's no sort of response by either side that's written up, which would create the precedence for future cases. What does this mean? It allows for future cases that are similar to come back before the Supreme Court. And so while it was a victory in many cases saying that charter schools are public schools, public money should not be used for religious schools, and that schools should be non-denominational, it does open up in the future for future cases to come. And so this is something that we are tracking. You should be paying attention to. It has an impact not just on charter schools, but on all public schools and public education in the country altogether. And so these are things that we're tracking. You should pay attention to. One of the things I was surprised there was not as much news about this because of the impact it could have had on education. But we're going to continue to track these issues, particularly at this when it becomes the federal level, it's the courts, the Capitol Hill level, the budgets, the state and local. But we wanted to let you know that this case came before the Supreme Court. It was a 4-4 tie. It did establish that charter schools are public schools, which we believe and we all know to be true, but that you cannot use public money for religious schools. And we also know that we want to be mindful that this could come back up again, and we're going to be ready for it. What are you hearing, Carrie? And what are the things you think people should be paying attention to that in many ways they're too busy to pay attention to?
Well, Curtis, I got to jump in on this SCOTUS case because this was a big deal. And I want to say from the jump, the National Parents Union, we are 10 toes down for charter schools. And frankly, so are American families. We have polled and actually done the research in the field, asking American families how they feel about charter schools. And 80% of American families support public school choice, public school options, including charter schools. So let's just make the record very clear. But the reason why they love charter schools is because they're looking for meaningful, measurable results. That means schools that operate differently and are innovative and are doing the incredible thing that charter schools do, which is be these incubators of new ideas and new approaches, but with the parameters, knowing that they've got to serve every kid, that they've got to make sure that they're actually producing academic results that are worthy of being able to operate a school. These are things that parents absolutely love, and why, there was kind of a red alert saying, oh my gosh, if these schools are going to be in danger, we got to get in the mix. So what we did with our friends from Educators for Excellence and the National Charter Collaborative, Diverse Charter Schools, Brown's Promise, we filed our own amicus brief. And now an amicus brief is a filing that we kind of insert ourselves in the case and say, hold on a second. We can see that, the St. Isidore is suing the state of Oklahoma, but we would like a word as well. And we had quite a word. Now, I know that I might be a little biased, but I think there is something a little special about our amicus brief. And so I would encourage everyone, it's Friday night, maybe tonight you pick up a little glass of wine, maybe whatever your beverage of choice is, maybe you break into this amicus because it is a beautiful defense, not only of public schools. And we worked with our friend, Jim Liebman from Columbia, and we're represented by Wilmer Hale, which is one of these law firms that has been just so courageous in these moments to protect public education and other really important parts of our government. But they did such a beautiful job of really framing why our founding fathers thought public education was so critical and so important to our republic, and what it was going to look like in our society if we couldn't guarantee that anybody, regardless of their background or their religious affiliation, did not have access to school. I mean, it would just be a disaster. And they also make quite clear the case that charter schools are public schools. So again, Curtis, I'm a little biased because it's ours, and I think it is beautifully done, and I think I'm a little fangirl of Jim's too because I think Jim just did a spectacular job. But I would read it; it's fantastic, and frankly, I was so proud that our Family Advisory Council, all of our staff, families that we talked to across the country were united in defense of charter schools, but making sure that we only are using federal dollars to go to schools that are free and open to all kids.
And this is why we're here. We want to be able to introduce issues that are happening, give you some opportunities to read more about it after the show's over. You had the amicus brief there if you want to dig a little deeper into the issue. And so in a short time we want to highlight things. We also want to give you information to take with you after the show is over. Carrie, you also follow what's happening on Capitol Hill. You have the Trump administration has introduced their budget, and it says a lot about what they believe and feel about education in this country. What are you seeing, which as you're back and forth on the Hill with you and your members?
Oh boy, and boy was I ever seeing it last week, Curtis, because not only were we reading the skinny budget that the Trump administration put out, which had a lot to say about public education, what we were going to fund, what we were going to cut, what we were going to smash into block grants, all that, but we actually went in to the hearing, the House Appropriations Committee hearing, where Linda McMahon, who's the new U.S. Secretary of Education, had to go in and answer questions from the House committee about this budget. And frankly, it was kind of interesting to see in real time because this skinny budget, and you're hearing this skinny budget, Trump's skinny budget, what that actually means is that there's not a lot of information in it. They didn't give enough detail. And so actually we've heard some rumors that as soon as today, we could see what's called the fat budget, where all the details could come out. So skinny and fat, this is what's happening in DC.
Well, either skinny or fat, it's as big and beautiful, whether it's skinny or fat, right?
Listen, like the new Lizzo song, okay? I've been skinny, I've been fat. Like, let's get hip to it. Like, even in DC, they are ahead of the curve.
Beautiful through and through.
I will tell you that what's interesting is that Rosa DeLauro, who is the Connecticut Democratic senator, who is the ranking member on House Appropriations, was holding her feet to the fire, saying, I don't have enough information in this budget that you're presenting on education to really make any decisions. But what the details you've given me, we're not really happy with. And even Congressman Simpson, who's on the other side of the aisle, the Republicans, taking her to task over cutting some really critical programs like TRIO, like Gear Up, that offer these incredibly important programs that first-time college students use so that they can access higher education. And he said very directly to her, listen, we've seen all kinds of secretaries come through here from Margaret Spellings on, and everybody's trying to cut this program. We don't have any data that tells us anything other than the fact that this is one of the most highly effective federal programs in getting kids to college that we have ever seen. So if you can show me some evidence, maybe I'll go along with your cut, but I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's where evidence should come in. And I'm glad that you're there. You're on the ground. You're knocking doors. You're listening in. You're a presence. And again, the folks who are listening in, they don't have time to get there on a weekday and sit in those hearings. So I'm so glad that you all are listening in. Any particular cuts other cuts that you're hearing about that are alarming, do you think could impact educators, parents, and students in this country?
So folks are going to need to start paying attention, because it's one thing to pass the skinny budget, the proposal from the Trump administration, where the House has been given their assignment in terms of how much money the Trump administration wanted to see them cut. It's one thing to get it through the House. The Senate is a whole other animal, and that is where all eyes are on right now, because now the Senate is grappling with the big, beautiful bill, also called budget reconciliation. So several Senate Republicans have voiced some significant reservations about this legislation because of some of the specific cuts, not only in education, but also to Medicaid and healthcare provisions, which are going to impact states. And you might be saying, Carrie, this is an education podcast. Why are you talking about Medicaid? What's this got to do? Medicaid is actually the fourth largest funder of public education in this country. A lot of funding that goes into our schools for children with special education comes from Medicaid. So you got to watch this, on top of the fact that kids who are hungry and kids who are not healthy cannot be learning. We've got to pay attention to this stuff intersectionally. Speaking of kids being hungry and hungry kids not learning, SNAP, the proposal to cut $230 to $280 billion from SNAP. Man, Curtis, I don't know about you, but being an expert in little boys in this house, like, listen, I'm a 46-year-old woman. Okay. If I am hungry, you can't even talk to me, let alone teach me something. Okay. Little boys, trying to teach them something when they're hungry. And for kids like ours, that could be the start to the school to prison pipeline. That is where they, a little boy acting up because they got a hungry tummy, getting sent to detention, getting sent to the principal's office. That can open up a door for their interaction with the disciplinary process that is really hard to close for kids like ours. And that's why things like SNAP, things like the USDA cuts that have been proposed in the Department of Agriculture that impact free lunch, free breakfast, can really pose significant problems in terms of what happens in classrooms. So we got to be paying attention. Healthy families means healthy students. And that means we can actually get some progress done in education. So we're going to be watching closely. And in addition, there are also some budget hawks like Senator Rand Paul and Ron Johnson who are saying, we're not really happy with this proposal. We don't like what it cuts. And frankly, the things that we want to cut that we think are fat and are wasteful, like it's just not enough here. So expect to see some drama happening this week. We're going to be in the mix because we always try to stay in the mix. And frankly, we love, one of our favorite things to do at the National Parents Union is to bring folks from the states in to talk to their U.S. senators. So we're going to be doing a lot of that, including with Elizabeth Warren, including with the chair of Senate Help Committee, Bill Cassidy, who is like watching all of this stuff and really paying close attention in Senate Help. So we're going to have about 30 to 40 parents in the mix, meeting with their senators from red states to make sure that the priorities of American families are heard as they negotiate this.
I love that. Before we leave the pod, we're going to allow people to find ways to reach out to you if they want to get involved and if they want to join your movement. When I was on my school board for 10 years, there was nothing like having parents show up at school board meetings to testify or to my office to sit down directly with me and share their personal story about how policies me and my colleagues were going to vote for affected them. Thank you so much. We also want to highlight on this podcast what we're following, particularly when it comes to research. Obviously, there's news happening on a daily basis. And if you're locked in on the news, you also miss out on what's happening on the grander scheme of how we're going to improve education to make sure that not only today, tomorrow, but next year and years from now, that our students are ready for college and career. And so there's research happening on a regular basis that I'm tracking, that Carrie tracks every day to see how do we challenge ourselves to look at education in new ways. And I'll share one thing I'm looking at most recently, a piece of polling that came out from Gallup, particularly as it relates to educators. And it found that of all the educators that Gallup had interviewed, education leaders, over half of them said it was very tough, extremely difficult to hire and find math teachers. This is something that's incredibly important. If you all are watching some of the results, both on national, which is NAEP, and PISA international exams, how our country fares on math exams, we need strong math teachers. And throughout the country, school leaders are saying it is harder to find math teachers than any other profession in the class, subject matter in the school building. But as you get older, from elementary, middle to high, it's most difficult to find high school math teachers. And why is this? Groups like the National Council on Teacher Quality, a great group that actually tracks teacher training and preparation, finds that really only 1 in 8 elementary school teacher preparation programs nationwide devote adequate time to teaching the fundamentals of math content. So you have teachers, school leaders trying to find math teachers. You have College of Education and prep programs not truly giving those future math teachers the preparation and training they need. And what does that mean? That results in what a lot of us are seeing, both as parents and educators, but also as school leaders and as a country and at large. We don't have enough students of all races who are proficient in math, who are going to go out and affect the world. We're dealing with artificial intelligence, going on. We're dealing with trying to respond to post-COVID learning loss, and we're trying to get our students ready for college and career, and we don't have the math teacher to do it. These are things that I'm tracking and research that we'll highlight in our social media that I think you should be checking out. Carrie, what kind of polling, what kind of research are you tracking from your lens?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to do some research tonight because I'm actually married to a math and science teacher. So I'm going to be testing him a little bit because, it's interesting as he gets prepared for summer break. You think that teachers are like, oh, well, I'm just going to rest. In addition to the honey-do list that I have made for Tim, he is actually actively already thinking about, like, how do I get prepared for next year? Where are the resources? And frankly, he's not finding a lot. So I'm going to to actually be doing my own little focus group tonight. I'm glad that you mentioned that,
Love
Curtis.
that.
That's really important. Some of the more important issues that are top of mind in the education conversation are coming out of a really important survey that was just released by Educators for Excellence. And again, I'm going to reveal my little bias here. I'm on the board of Educators for Excellence because these guys, these are my kind of gangsters. These are teachers who are so focused on what we can do to improve what is happening in the classroom. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at the Voices from the Classroom 2025 survey, you got to do it. Go to the e4e.org website. It's right there on their website, but really important data about how teachers see public schools as being key to helping students to understand civic responsibility, identifying and countering misinformation, and engaging in just respectful conversations about differences in opinion. So again, teachers are really focused not on indoctrination, which is what we're hearing from some folks, not telling kids what to think, but how to think, and how important it is now more than ever that we engage in that tough work in our classrooms. We really need it, especially in this day when there's so much influence coming at them from social media and everywhere else. So a lot of really important nuggets in this survey. So again, go to e4e.org. It's called Voices from the Classroom 2025. They do this every single year. We don't have to guess about what teachers think about what's going on in the classrooms. E4E is doing that work so we can make sure we're saying with fidelity, we know what teachers think and what they want.
There's so much going on. Polling's happening. You all are doing polling as well. I know you all have a new poll coming in the field.
Yes, and I just want to give you a little tease. I want to give you a little tease because at National Parents Union, like we don't just hire somebody to do our poll. We do the tough work of actually making sure that parents are part of creating the poll and driving the questions and making sure we get the questions right. So I literally last night, we just finally did all that work, got through it. This is going to be something special where we ask questions about the Senate budget bill that they're negotiating right now. So we can say with fidelity, here's what parents think about these cuts and the direction that Donald Trump is taking us in terms of this budget. We don't have to guess at it, right? We're also taking a deep dive on higher education and early education, asking some important questions. So again, we don't have to have our policymakers guessing what American families want. We're going to have the data to back it up.
I love that. Again, for those of you who are listening in or saying, Curtis, I got so much going on, I can't pay attention to all of it. This is where you come for the research, for the polling, for what's happening. So in the next coming week, Carrie, what are you looking at for next week and moving forward? In addition to all the other things we're dealing with, what are you tracking for next week?
Well, I got to tell you, we are really focused on making sure that we are prepared to meet with senators down in Washington and that we are bringing them truly the voices of American families and, frankly, students. So, all next week, we are asking teachers and students to help us by drawing pictures and writing letters to our senators that we are actually, I've got a whole stack of ones from students here who are, so we can make sure we are handing these over to our senators to know what they think is important about education, and they can see that. We're also getting ready and convening parents from across the country to make sure that their voices are really at the center of these conversations as we create this budget moving forward. So we're mobilizing, we're organizing, and making sure their voices are heard. Also encouraging folks to take a look at a really important piece that was written by Dr. Charlie Barone, who is our senior director of the Center for Innovation at NPU, calling out Democrats and saying very specifically, you guys need to find Jesus on public school choice because you guys, you sound weird when we're fighting against something that literally 80% of American families want. It's something that's good. It's something that's important. It's bipartisan. And we gotta dump the toxic politics and start moving forward. So I want to encourage everybody to visit our website at nationalparentsunion.org, and you can find that blog by Charlie.
Yeah, I mean, on my side, I'm tracking some of the information we're hearing about the administration's canceling contracts for groups like AmeriCorps and groups like, teacher apprenticeship programs in North Carolina. For those who don't know, AmeriCorps funding supports City Year, it supports Teach for America, it supports groups like Breakthrough Collaborative, all of which work in K-12 schools. These are supporting both traditional schools and public charter schools, and they are impacting how students are learning and have success coaches and volunteers and folks who are reading, but also teacher shortages. And so I'm tracking that, but I'm also tracking some recent news of how the Trump administration has cut a $13 million contract with the Research Triangle Institute in North Carolina. Why is that important? That funded a program that was helping teacher apprenticeship programs help other apprenticeship programs guide themselves into how to make sure that they can have those programs be successful in places like North Carolina. As I mentioned before, we're trying to find better math teachers. We need more reading teachers. We need teachers in Montessori, early childhood, all the way through high school. And we need as many programs as possible supporting those. We need diverse teachers. We need Black and brown teachers, men teachers. And so I'm tracking what that's looking like, bringing people together, talk more about what that could mean for public education and for, most importantly, parents and teachers.
And Curtis, I got to mention to you as you bring it up, we have heard from a lot of parents and families just in the last couple of weeks who are very afraid about those AmeriCorps volunteers in charter schools, leaving those schools and those positions. It's not going to be the same. And I think a lot of these cuts were made with the eye towards, well, we don't really know what this is, so we're just going to cut it without really understanding the impact. And that's why it's so important that all of us raise our hand and say, hold on a second. We love charter schools. We love schools. We love public education. Like, let's have a conversation before we do some significant damage for these programs that really are felt at the hyper local classroom level, and our kids are going to be wounded by.
Thank you so much. We're almost at the end of our pod. Again, we're short and sweet. Get you in, get you out, get you back to your lunch break. One thing we want to do and challenge you. At the end of every show, we want to highlight a legislative champion, a champion who is fighting for education. And this week we don't have one because we want you to help us nominate one. So between now and next week, if there's somebody at the local, state, or federal level who you're saying, Curtis and Carrie, you all need to celebrate this person, elected official, who is doing the work of ensuring that Black, brown students of all races and colors have a quality education regardless of their zip code. And we want to draw attention to that person specifically as we move into election years. And so again, that legislative champion where you are, please hit us up, hit me up, hit Carrie up in our socials to make sure that we champion those folks. It's been a great half hour, Carrie. This episode, I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but this has exceeded all my expectations. I am so happy to be along with you on this journey.
I think it's going to be fun.
Oh, I like it. So if you are listening now, if you all like what you see, like, share, comment, and then meet us back here on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, every Friday at 12 o'clock for The Union. You're here with Curtis Valentine, Carrie Rodriguez. Any last word before we get out of here, Carrie?
No, just please pray for me. I got an 8 a.m. start tomorrow for my AAU team, man.
Oh,
and it's an hour and 45-minute drive to get there.
Puts it all in perspective, where it's all said and done, because, there's no days off for us parents on the weekends. And so we're here to help you all parents and you educators who are too busy to really have to worry about what's going on. We want to be your voice and your ears and your eyes on what's happening. Meet us back here next week at 12 o'clock for the Union podcast. Curtis Valentine,